The story begins with the boy Ars, a simple young man with no experience in anything. He returned from work and everything was fine. The next day, he woke up and went to work again, but he felt something strange. Yes, he put his hand on his heart and suddenly his sense disappeared completely. He suffered a cardiac arrest and died instantly. But suddenly, he finds himself opening his eyes again, thinking he's in the hospital, and that's his nurse. But what is it? Why is there a flying dog in the room? Is he dreaming or what? Soon our hero realizes that he has moved to another world. When he looks at himself in the mirror, he discovers that he has become a small child who understands nothing about life. He soon learns that he has been reborn in this world, and it looks like he will turn the situation upside down. 3 years pass, during which time he learns to read and write, living a luxurious life, surrounded by servants and guards everywhere. Luckily for him, he was born in the kingdom of Asimor, specifically in a town called Darien, which is ruled by his father, and he is the ruler of the town. Over time, Ars descends into the training ground to follow the soldiers training himself. Meanwhile, he observes 2 soldiers training together, but one clearly assaults the other. Ars looks at him and activates his mysterious ability. Here we discover that he has the ability to evaluate, which enables him to determine the level of skills of anyone in front of him and to know his strengths and weaknesses. Ars discovers that this soldier is not talented in close combat, but he is very skilled in using a bow and arrows. He goes to him and tells him, "Why don't you try using a bow?" The soldier hesitates at first because he has never used a bow before, but decides to try it based on Ars's words. When it aims at the target, the arrow is fired and hit with extreme precision. Repeat the experiment again and hit the target again. The soldiers gather around him in amazement, shouting to him, "Oh my god!" When someone asks, "How did you know he was talented in archery?" Ars replies with a smile, "Just a feeling." After a while, Ars has lunch with his father, Governor Raven, who admires his ability to discover talent, but warns him that the coming days will be difficult, as the kingdom may enter many wars and conflicts. He is asked to prepare well for this stage, and Ars responds with approval. One day, while wandering around town, Ars notices a young man lying on the ground while being bullied by others. He discovers that this boy is from the race of the 2 kings, a race treated as slaves and sold in the markets. Getting angry, Ars approaches him and gives him food, then discovers that his name is Rhett. As soon as Ars uses his power, he is shocked. He saw supernatural abilities, perhaps the second most powerful he had ever seen after his father. After Rhett eats, he tries to leave, but Ars rushes after him, tells him that he is Governor Raven's son, and wants to make him his vassal. Rhett refuses at first, but when Ars promises him that he will get the food he dreams of if he joins him, he changes his mind and accepts. When Ars asks his father to allow Rhett to live in the palace, the ruler strongly refuses, especially when he learns that he is of the race of the 2 kings. But Ars insists that Rhett has terrifying abilities, and one day he may be as powerful as his father. The governor quipped, "This is nonsense. I'll test it myself, and if he can touch me just once, I'll let him join us. But if it fails, I don't want to see it again." Ars agrees to the challenge, confident that Rhett will succeed despite the huge difference in strength between them. The fight begins. Raven attacks hard, while Rhett tries to dodge his blows but realizes he's facing a real monster. Rhett takes a blow that knocks him down, but he looks at Ars and remembers his confidence in him, and he stands up again, showing unprecedented determination. He attacks with all his might, and with a sudden blow he manages to hit a hair from Raven's head. In doing so, he passes the test, and the ruler recognizes his talent, and even praises Ar's ability to discover talent. After a period of training and study, Ars tells his friend Rhett about the history of the kingdom, and how it was originally 7 countries that were unified by King Asimuref, but he died, and his son took over the rule despite being just an 8-year-old child, which made a group of thieves control the kingdom's decisions. Ars knows that the kingdom will soon collapse, so he decides to gather a group of talented people around him in preparation for that day. Rhett suggests they walk around town in search of talented individuals. While wandering, Ars hears a man calling him out at the market, offering to buy rare dragon eggs at a fantastic price. Ars is about to accept, but Rhett intervenes, puts his dagger on the seller's neck and tells him, "You're a crook. No one like you can have that number of dragon eggs. Also, real dragon eggs do not contain these stains. These are just giant lizard eggs." Rhett tries to punish him, but Ars stops him and takes him away. Later, while wandering through the market, he is robbed by a mysterious person, but Rhett quickly chases him and catches him, only to discover that he is a beautiful girl. But she runs to an alleyway, and they follow her, only to find that she is surrounded by a gang of criminals beating her. Ars intervenes in anger, but a gangster tries to attack him, and Rhett confronts him easily, then pounces on the rest of the gang like a ninja, and kills them with quick blows. At this moment, Ars does his ability again, but is stunned. The abilities of this girl girl are not normal at all, but exceed all expectations, despite her young age. Ars asks her to join them, but she refuses, saying, "I'd rather die than be a follower of a spoiled child like you, Ars." He kept trying to convince her that he was willing to do anything for her to agree, and indeed she told him, "I agree, but on the condition, you have to remove the rich people's contempt for people like me. Stop looking at us as slaves, and most importantly, eliminate street hunger." She took out the money and threw it at them, saying, "Take this money and get out of here quickly." Ars said to her, "But people have been beating you a little while ago, and I'm worried about you." She told him that a nobleman had kidnapped her and wanted to sell her, but she managed to escape from him, causing him to send criminals after her to return her to him. At this moment, a group of orphans ran towards her, and we learned that her name was Jane, and that she was caring for these children and fighting the hunger that could kill them at any moment. Ars was deeply moved and gave her all the money he had, saying, "I hope you take her, and we will surely meet again." Upon returning to the palace, he sat alone feeling very sad for Jane and the children living on the street. Rhett tried to relieve him, but suddenly they heard a voice calling out to them. Yes, it was the kids who were with Jane, and they came to ask for his help, as they learned that the gang had arrested Jane again, and it seems that this will indeed be the end of it. She was taken to the gang leader's house, thrown to the ground, and the gang members began to mock her and brutally beat her. Jane couldn't even move from her place. Then the gang leader said, "Stop hitting her face, this will reduce her price." Jane tried to take her money and run away, but they beat her again and threw her to the ground again. She remembered the orphaned children, but she couldn't do anything. Same to you. Do you think this is the end of it? Suddenly, the door shattered above their heads, and Ars appeared in the place. One of the gang members tried to attack Rhett, but easily eliminated him, and then completely destroyed the gang. Ars then turned to the gang leader and told him, "Either you let Jane go, or you'll regret it." When the leader realized that Ars was the son of a nobleman, he was frightened and said to him, "Why defend her? People like you buy and torture them just for fun." Even Jane seemed surprised, telling him, "Why would you put your life at risk for me? I don't understand what you're doing." Ars said to her, "Don't worry, we're not like them. Don't be afraid for me. Nothing will happen to me." Then he turned to Rhett and said to him, "Eliminate them." Rhett couldn't believe what he heard, so he set out to kill the gang without hesitation. Two tried to attack him with the magic of fire, but he turned into a ghost among them and immediately wiped them out. The boss of the gang realized that it had become dangerous, so he summoned their most powerful criminal and told him, "If you get rid of them, I will give you big money." Jane was scared of the criminal, but Ars reassured her, "Don't worry, we're safe." The criminal stupidly attacked Rhett, but suddenly disappeared and then reappeared, eliminating their most powerful criminal easily. The leader was horrified and said, "The governor of the city allows the slave trade. I don't understand why you are doing this." Ars said to him quietly, "Simple. Take this money and consider that I bought it." Rhett then told the leader, "You have two choices. Either you take the money and don't tell anyone what happened, or I'll cut off your tongue to make sure you never speak again." The leader was terrified and said, "Without money too? I agree." Ars then went to Jane and took her with him. Along the way, Jane chose different paths so no one would recognize them. They reached the city limits, and the place was very desolate. Rhett took out a magic tool, then said to Jane, "Try using your magical skills." She said, "But I've never used magic before, and I don't even know how to start." Rhett replied, "Well, I'll teach you some spells. Now try them." Indeed, Jane began to cast the spell. A vortex of flames broke out in the place, and suddenly a huge explosion shook the entire city. Ars and Rhett were shocked, and no one believed what had happened in front of him. Jane was very happy. At the time, Jane asked Ars, "Will you provide me with food and shelter now that I have joined you?" Ars said to her, "Yes, and you will also get a salary." But Jane refused, saying, "I don't want a salary. I just want you to send any money to the orphan children. They have no one but me to take care of them." She then thanked him for everything he had done for her and promised him that she would do her best to help him. When they arrived at the mansion, Raven met them at the door, and when he saw Jin, he refused to let her in, saying, "What is this? Do you intend to include a vagabond in our team?" Ars then asked him to see Jane her power, and she showed off her magic in front of him. When he saw her incredible power, he told her, "Your room is inside, on the right." Years passed. 3 years later, Raven came back from a battle, telling them, "We won thanks to Jane." Yes, the girl has grown up. Her strength has evolved into a super imaginative, and her presence in the team has turned the tide of any battle. We also learned that Ars now has twin brothers. At that time, Reet called Ars and told him that there was a family of very skilled fishermen on the border of the village. Ars was very happy, and he took Rhett and Jane with him, and they went to them quickly. Suddenly, they saw a pig running around, and then one of the arrows hit it, and it was hunted. The two hunters ran towards them to apologize, as the arrows were not supposed to be fired in the presence of people nearby. Ars looked at them and realized that they were exactly the target they wanted, the family of fishermen he was looking for. He went with them to their house, where their father gave them food, and was very happy that Ars, the son of the village governor, had come to them. Ars wasted no time, but asked them to join his team to become village soldiers. The father was very happy and said to his children, "Finally, your dream has come true." By the way, the one on the right is called Mark, who is the eldest, and the one in the middle is called Atos, who is the younger brother. Then the father father tells Lars, I'm really proud of you despite your age. You are talented and strive to preserve the village, unlike Zane. And when he asks him, who is this? He replies that he has a younger son who is almost the same age as him, but he is a failure, a coward, and has no pride. At that time, Zane enters to greet them, and he is very shy. As usual, Ars does the assessment skill on him, and he asks, what exactly is this? His strategic skills have reached the rank of S despite his young age, but his intelligence is beyond imagination. Ars is surprised and asks Zane to join them as well. So the young man thinks that he will enter into wars and fights, as he is afraid of his imagination in the first place. So he refuses, and runs hiding in his room, closing the door on himself. The father then apologizes to Lars and tells him that Zane has always been introverted and has been sitting alone since his mother's death, and that, unlike his brothers, he is a failure and a coward. Ars tells him, shut up. You don't understand anything. Your son has a talent that deserves full respect. He enters Zane's room and tries to talk to him. The young man is scared at first, but Ars notices that he likes to read, so he tells him that if he joins them, he will take him to their palace library, which contains all the books he wishes. Zane says to him, okay, and in fact he takes them and goes home, and then says to Jane, after that, take Mark and Atos to the training place, while he takes Zayn and takes him to the library and tells him, live teacher, and if you need anything, let Rhett. After a while, he returns to him again, and to his surprise, Zayn lies on the ground after finishing reading a large number of books. Ars activates the assessment skill and observes something very strange. Zayn's abilities have increased in just a few hours, and the boy, he understands nothing. Ars stands with Rhett and Jane and says, I want to prove Zayn's abilities to his family, specifically to his father. What you want, he replies. A very amazing idea. Ars gathers everyone in the forest and says to Zayn, I want you to hunt us some animals, but without weapons. Zayn says, okay, while his brothers remain shocked. It wasn't long before we saw the greatness. The father finds one of the strategic traps has been set in the place, and a huge number of animals have been hunted. In addition to Zayn placed herbs to keep mothers and young from falling into the trap for the sake of ecological balance, and also designed places that allow the young to get out of the trap in case any child enters by mistake. And this is exactly what happens when genius and creativity come together. The father stands shocked and does not believe that Zayn is whoever did it. But contrary to expectations, his father does not express any reaction, telling Lars, I hope you take them and come back again. Be careful with them, and then leaves them and leaves. What exactly is the story? And why was the father's action strange? At that time, Zayn is so sad that he goes to lock himself in his room and reflect on his painful memories. On the other hand, we see the father standing on the roof with Mark and Atos, and when asked why, he replies, he always treated Zayn badly, and despite being a father, he could not discover his son's skills or stand by him, and I feel very negligent. I can't even look him in the eye. Of course, Zayn listened to all these words and was deeply moved, knowing how remorseful his father was. The next day, it's time to leave, as the older brothers say goodbye to their father to leave. Zayn comes out second, but he doesn't say goodbye to anyone present, and suddenly he comes back and talks to his father while he is cutting wood, saying, you never fell short with me, but you didn't give me the opportunity to prove myself, and I promise to make you extremely proud of me. When the father hears these words, he is very moved and bids farewell to his son as well. At that time, the brothers gather and thank Ars very much, promising him that they will do what they can to help him. Years pass, Ars has grown up, King Raven is tired, and we know that they will get into battle within the next 2 days, because the town's governor is dead. The king is not such a thing, but the governor, and what is important is that the ruler abdicated to his youngest son from the rule, and despite the approval of the eldest son, some villains have caused strife, and ignited a war between them. The neighboring town is helping, and it is impossible for corrupt rulers to send their soldiers for the purpose of occupation. Raven wanted to extinguish the flames of war in this way, but suddenly he gave up all of that and told Ars, I want you to prepare yourself for your speeches. Ars replies, there is no time for that right now. The world is on fire, and it seems that you are about to say goodbye. Prepare yourself, son. No more time, says Raven, and he agreed with the nobleman to send his daughter to the palace so that she could get to know Ars. The young man rushes into the team saying he has a big problem, and when they know that Raven wants to get engaged, they rejoice in him. Suddenly, the maid reports the arrival of the bride's procession, and in fact, he goes out to receive her outside, and frankly finds her like a daughter of the moon. For example, her name is Lisa. When Ars activates the assessment skill on her, a voice appears indicating that the girl has high diplomatic abilities and is not the worst ambassador, but he doubts her intentions and thinks about who exercises authority over her. Lisa talks to Ars in a very nice way, and then they sit down to eat together. She thanks him for the warm reception and hospitality and asks him to walk with her outside the town. When he tells her it's raining and she thinks she can't go out, she tells him count to 3, and suddenly the rain stops and the sun rises again. Ars is surprised and thinks that Lisa is controlling the weather, but later discovers that it was raining when it came, and when she saw the clouds clouds, she was able to calculate the time of the rain disappearing accurately and brilliantly. Later they go out for walks together in the village, and suddenly we find two people embracing, and at the same time Zane and Jane reach them, and Jane wants to solve the problem in her own way, but Lisa prevents her, so she goes to them and solves the problem completely in less than seconds, which amazes ours. After the day is over, they come home, and that night Lisa says to him, "If I ask you a question, would you answer honestly?" He replies, "Absolutely," and then asks him, "What is the main reason why you might love the one in front of you?" He gets a little confused, but answers, "The thing that makes me love the one in front of me the most is not to be a liar, not to hide anything from me," because he still doubts her. Lisa says to him, "I promise I won't hide anything from you." Then you let go and go. In the evening, he goes into his room to sleep, and when he lifts the lid, he finds Lisa in front of him, and he gets a little scared and screams, and she tells him, "Calm down. I wouldn't have been able to sleep if I hadn't asked you another question." She pours him tea and says, "Give me what you have," and then continues, "I want to know your opinion honestly," because she's sure something went wrong and can't understand why he behaved with her this way. Here, Ars admits to her the truth, saying that he can in a certain way discover the skills of others, and that her skill in diplomacy is beyond imagination, but he cannot determine whether she acted from her heart or used it for a particular end. Lisa rejoices and tells him, "I promise you will completely change your mind about her," expressing her feelings for him and admiration for his intelligence, stressing that he will have a bright future. Then she marries him first, then leaves him and goes on her way. After a while, he returns home, while Ars communicates with her. Through the letters, he shows his attachment to her and seems to have fallen in love with her. Ars and his team then meet with Raven, whose health is deteriorating at a time when he tells them that the governor of Mesan is about to die, and that the war will flare up within days. It should be noted that the province to which their village belongs, and more importantly, all the villages and cities in the kingdom of Mesan, will be divided into two groups. One supports the elder brother, the other supports the younger brother, while Raven believes that the elder brother is to rule. The elders of the cities are scheduled to hold a meeting soon in which they must attend, but Raven feels exhausted and is gripped by the disease. After a while, the governor of Kenry sends a letter setting the date for the meeting, and Ars decides to take Brett and Zane and attend the meeting on behalf of his father. When he arrives in Cannery, in front of the castle, the soldier who sees the invitation is astonished. "A child like you, what brought you here?" After entering the castle, the lieutenant governor meets them. Ars activates the assessment skill and realizes how adept he is at planning and making decisions, and that this deputy was the most suitable place for him. When Ars enters the base of the meeting, he finds two city governors, and he feels nervous at first, but settles down when the man shows a good side and gives it to him, saying, "Finally, I have grown up and are attending meetings." On the other hand, the barrel-like man could not tolerate Ars at all. Then the governor of the city of Canary, named Anumir, enters to thank them for coming and tells them that they must be fully prepared starting today, as a war will break out in the region within days, and they must control it and defend their people, in addition to supporting the elder brother in taking over the affairs of the kingdom of Mesan. Then the meeting ended, and we found Governor Anumir standing in front of Ars, reassuring him of Raven's health, saying that he was proud of him and his team, and that they would make a big difference on the next battlefield. And then he was gone. But that was not in the presence of the man who could not bear Ars, and I will tell you why. At first he is Lisa's father, and when Ars found out, he was shocked. He said to him, "I am wrong because I trusted you. My daughter became depressed because of you, and I sent you messages for several days without showing any interest." Ars replied, "I was writing a letter to send her, but I had to stop because of the problems that hindered me, from my father's illness, wars, meetings, and other problems." The man added, "Lisa got attached to you a lot, so take care of her," then left him and left. When Ars returned home, he sat down with Raven to brief him on what had happened at the meeting, and he was very proud. After a while, we found Ars and Rit training together, and during the training, Ret admitted that Ars is a bit weak. He only has the skill of evaluation and no other, because he is very afraid of any fight, even if it is only training, which he may lose in the next battle. At that moment, Zane received a letter from Governor Anumir, ordering him to move the soldiers immediately, because the neighboring province of Said began sending soldiers to take control of a city in Mesan province. We found Ars unable to hold his nerves, seemingly frightened beyond imagination. He gathered the soldiers at the training ground and told them that he would move immediately and that he would be the commander of the battle. But Raven reached them and told him, "You will not participate in the war, and if you want to prove that you are a man ready for combat, I will put you to the test now." He ordered the soldiers to bring in a dangerous criminal accused of theft, rape, and murder, who was sentenced to death, and told them that if he could watch the sentence be carried out without losing his temper, they would win the battle with him. Indeed, the execution began, and suddenly the criminal's neck deviated from its course, and Ars entered a state of nausea and completely lost his concentration from the scene in front of him, so he collapsed on the ground without being able to move. His father said to him, "Yes, this is what I was talking about. The scene of death will surround you from all sides in battle, so you cannot come with us, teacher." And then he took the soldiers and left. Then the team team went to Ars, but Raven called out to them, saying, "Come with me." And later, everyone went to the battlefield, where Raven showed remarkable prowess in combat and shot down enemies one by one. And Rhett joined him, while Jane was wreaking havoc in the place with her deadly charm. And Zen returned to present the archers, suddenly killing a huge number of enemy soldiers, and they won brilliantly. Unfortunately, Raven's condition deteriorated sharply until he fainted, and the team had to return home immediately. After a while, Ars went to check on his father, and Rhett told him that he was fighting with all his might, which negatively affected his health. But, on the contrary, he told him fine. And then upon his awakening, he told them that he would go down to the training ground, and then he left. "If I were brave enough, I would have led the soldiers in his place," Ars said to himself, blaming himself, as if to blame himself, and he continued to receive blows. At that moment, Lisa arrived to check on Ars and Raven, and she was very worried. Rhett told her what had happened from the beginning, and that Ars felt weak when they went to battle and left them alone, in addition to feeling guilty for Raven and taking full responsibility. She didn't know he was on the training ground, so she went there to check on him, but she found him training with all his strength, and yet he would say, "As long as I'm weak, I can't protect the one I love." On the other hand, we learned that Raven recovered his health and summoned the whole team, saying, "I don't talk to you as a governor, I talk to you as a father," and then said, "Ars is not strong enough to fight any fight, and I hope that you will stay by his side until the end, and support and protect him no matter what, because I will not talk long." The team was very moved, and they replied, "Okay." When he learned that Lisa was out, Ars sent her a letter recommending himself, saying, "Despite my abilities, I am still very weak, but having you by my side will definitely make a difference with me." And Lisa began to cry and told him, "Ars, you do everything to be like your father and more, and I promise you that I will never abandon you." When asked if she liked Ars, she replied, "Yes." At that time, Ars suddenly walked in on him carrying several books and herbs, saying, "I have found your cure for your condition." But Raven told him, "I'm fine, just sit next to me, I want to talk to you a little." His father said to him, "When I was your age, I used to live a life that did not inherit it. The governor of the village imposed taxes on us by force, so I fled to a city where the situation was different and people lived with joy, and the ruler was a good and strong person, and this encouraged me to become one of his soldiers. And soon I proved my skills and promoted, and I became a private village under my rule, and its people knew everything about it, so I advised them to preserve and protect it at all costs." At that moment, Ars knew that the end was near, so he spent the night with his father quietly, and as expected, Raven released his last breath and lay in peace. The people of the village gathered and said goodbye to Ars, who wept in sorrow over the separation, but he gathered his nerves and announced to all those present that he would continue his father's journey and that he would protect the village until the last breath of his life. So all the villagers stood with him and supported him on this decision. Zane also cried and remembered how much Raven treated him like a son, so that Jane conjured up her memories and how much Raven cared about her, and she considered him her father. Everyone was moved, but they supported Ars and promised him that they would stay by his side and never abandon him. At that time, they declared Ars governor of the village in place of the deceased Raven, and on the other hand, Anamir held a second meeting to mourn Raven's death and install Ars as official governor. Anamir then told them, "The war has actually begun. From here we move to Mason province, where they are currently located, and in a constant dispute between the elder brother and the younger brother over assuming power. The region includes a huge number of cities and villages. The younger brother has dominated the north, which appears in sky in front of you, while the elder brother controls the south, which appears in green. However, in one village, which is supposed to be an extension point in case, the attack on the north began. By the way, its name is the village of Bryn, but for some reason they turned against us, so we must join them by force." However, Ars had a different opinion, and asked Anamir to give him a grace period to investigate the matter first, before using force. Indeed, Anamir agreed and sat down with his team, and we know that Zane doubts a very dangerous secret, so he tells Ars, "We have to gather all the information from inside the village." And Rit asks him, "Very simple, I know a group of mercenaries called the Shadow, and we can assign them the task in exchange for money." Ars was impressed and said, "Okay." The next day, we found them walking in the streets, and we know that Ars has established an orphanage of the highest standard, and Jane visits the children there constantly and gives charity with a large part of the care salary of the home. Everyone will be happy with this achievement. Suddenly, someone heard him calling Ars, and it turned out that Lisa had come to greet him, and she was very happy with the house and kept playing with the children all day. In the evening, Ars sat down with Lisa, and they told her that she had to leave because Ars had an appointment with the Shadow Mercenary Group, assigning them one of the missions. Lisa replied, "Okay, when do we walk?" Ars replied, "From now on, on, I'm with you wherever you go. Even if you're going to Mars, I won't leave you. The next day, they took some of them and arrived at a bar in the north of the city to meet the shadow group. Rhett told them that the old leader of the group had died, and that there was a new leader who was said to be stronger than the previous one, so they should be very careful. Finally, they arrive at the bar, and when the man tells them that the place is finished, Rhett tells him the password, and he is allowed to enter, and we notice how dangerous the place is. Ars said, sure, their leader has the highest abilities, and he activated the evaluation skill on him, but he couldn't determine. Suddenly, a girl came and said to them, what are you drinking? Ars was surprised, and said to himself, this is higher than the highest skills I have seen in my life. He is the leader of the shadow group. So Ars paid attention, and stood to wash his face to reduce his tension, and suddenly he was fixed in the room. Then the leader of the shadow appeared as a boy at the end and said to him, how did you know I was the leader of the group despite all the disguise? Suddenly, the shadow commander's dagger was hit, and Rhett intervened to save Ars at the last minute, and Lisa walked in saying, I think that after you are exposed, you should carry out Ars's mission completely. The shadow commander smiled and said, I have a second plan. I can eliminate you all without anyone noticing. And Rhett replied, simple uncle, in front of you, it's over. It's already difficult for us, and he wants us to get rid of it. The commander said, I first want to know how Ars revealed me. And that's when they learned that Ars had the skill of evaluation, and therefore was able to detect him easily. Lisa also learned from Ars that this was the leader, and when she was afraid, she informed Rhett of it. When asked to gather information about the village of Brian, the commander said, very simple. In exactly 5 days, I will gather all the information about this village for you. Ars was impressed, and 5 days later, Ars and Rhett went to the leader, whose name we know was X, and he said to him, well, you've done the job. They learned that he not only did the job personally, but also managed to obtain a very dangerous document from inside the governor's house, and he told them, and when Ars opened it, he found that it bore the seals of the cities and villages supporting the younger brother. Look to the right, said X, and Ars Rhett was amazed, as this was the seal of Massa, our biggest ally, and their presence with us would completely determine the fate of the war, as Massa has the greatest power in the region, which means that Massa is betraying them, and therefore the village of Breen refused to join Big Brother. Of course, if soldiers are sent to the village, the city of Massa will strike a fatal blow against them, and the massacre will begin. At the same time, thanking X for his effort, he took Rhett and Zane and went to Animir and handed him the document, and they read the story and found out that they had been betrayed. Animir then saluted Ars for his intelligence and tremendous effort, and handed the document to his deputy. Suddenly, the deputy said that the document was genuine, and all the seals were original except for the stamp of Massa, as an old stamp belonging to the city of Massa came and compared them, and they concluded that the younger brother had deceived the governor of the village of Breen to join him. The biggest surprise was that village it contains explosive stones, and these stones possess a destructive power beyond imagination. Here Zane told them that the village of Brian should know that they had been deceived. The village governor asked, but how? And Zane replied easily, it's very simple. After some time, we found Ars accompanied by 2 representatives before the governor of Breen, who stated that the village of Raven wanted to announce its joining the younger brother, because they heard that the city of Massa had joined him, and that it was not important who won the government. They ensure an alliance with the strongest. The governor of Breen replied, that's good, even though you're young, but you're very competent. Ars asked, are you sure that Massa has already joined the younger brother? And the governor hesitated and doubted, asking to order the soldiers to attack them. Suddenly, Rhett intervened, and Ars told the governor, wait a minute, I'll check if Massa really joined the younger brother. We go back with a flashback, where we learn that Zane had taken Ars, and they went to Massa, where they met the governor, also known as Kim. They discovered that his seal was being forged, and Kim came angry with them and said, I'll come with you. That's enough. Then we returned, and Kim confirmed that the seal was forged, and that it was impossible for him to join the younger brother at all, and threatened the governor of Bryn from the heart of his palace, saying, but Ars intervened. Although I made a mistake, you have a chance to prove your loyalty, prevent the export of explosive stones, and declare that you will join us immediately. After some time, we found Ars standing at Raven's grave, telling him what had happened in detail. I missed you so much, and I will never disappoint you. Zane and Rit then arrived to check on him, and Ars said to them, without you, I wouldn't have been able to do anything, thank you. They were surprised by the presence of Animir, who was visiting his friend Raven, and he informed Ars that the older brother, whose name was Dan, had heard what you had done, and demanded to meet you as well. Ars was confused and nervous, but suddenly his friends came to encourage him, so he regained his courage and said, okay. Later, Ars and Reet and Zane took a car and drove to Dan Castle. They learned that King Dan held a large ceremony that brought together all the rulers of the towns and villages of the province. Ars reached the limits of the castle, and the place was wonderful. As he entered, everyone looked at him in amazement because he was a young man. Ars was very confused, but suddenly he found Animir welcoming him, and rushed to him and greeted him. And Animir began, Ars is introduced to the people as the governor of the village of Raven, and Ars regained his self-confidence and some of his joy. Meanwhile, everyone stopped because King Dan went out to receive them. Then Dan came came out, and he was so luxurious. And when Ars put the assessment skill on him, he said, "How can these abilities be higher than the highest abilities I've ever seen?" Dan then welcomes them and gives a motivational speech to the rulers, telling them that he will declare Maysan an independent kingdom after winning the war against his brother Mark Jr. Everyone encouraged him to do so. Suddenly, King Ars called out to Ars and said, "Come by my side here." And Ars was a little confused, but his friends pushed him towards him. When the king approached, he thanked him very much and praised his mighty intelligence and his ability to discover the deception of his brother Mark the Little, and asked everyone to applaud him for the achievement he had achieved. Soon after, Ars merged with those present, but when he felt tired, he went out to refresh himself in calm air on his own. At that moment, someone spoke to him, and suddenly it turned out to be King Dan. Ars trembled in fear, told him, "Don't worry, I want to talk to you a little, because I know you have a strange ability to discover other people's skills, so I would like to ask you about the abilities of my allies." Ars thought a little, and since he used the skill of evaluation on the wise without making mistakes, he said, "Their abilities do not even reach the level of soldiers. They are very weak." Dan replied, "He lived on you. I know they're very loyal, but none of them has a special ability at all. I'm going to borrow one of your team members." Ars Dan asked, "What speech made me join your brother?" "I'm kidding you, but I want to tell you that we have a strong army and abundant financial resources, but we lack the skills that you and your team have. You are a great addition to us," Dan replied. Then he said, "If only I could find a talented person. Bring him to me personally." The surprise was that he intended to appoint him as president of the city of Canary, which is of Anumir origin, and of course Anumir would retain a greater position in the kingdom. "I'm confident in you and your team," Dan stressed, then said goodbye to Ars and walked. Shortly after, Ars and Rit were found at the Shadow Chief, and there Ars asked the Shadow Chief to look for highly skilled people with them, saying, "If you help me, ask for whatever you want." The Shadow Boss agreed, and it took a while for a woman in a difficult situation to beat the Shadow Boss. When he told her they were closed, she explained that she did not intend to stay with them, but was looking for work. One of the gang members came out screaming at her and wanting to get her out, but the Shadow Leader acted wisely. He sat down with her and gave her food. On the other hand, the woman identified herself as Mary and said, "I tell you, I was working with the governor of Maysan province before he died, and when conflict broke out between his sons, he left them and walked." The Shadow Leader replied, "You came at the right time." Then the scene moved to Ars, and suddenly a maid entered on him and told him that someone was waiting for him outside. And when he went out, he found the leader of the Shadow standing in front of him with Mary, and he said to him, "I have brought you your request, sir." Rhett told Ars, "Are you sure she's talented? Don't go back behind me." The Shadow Boss replied, then left them and walked. When Ars activated the evaluation skill on her, he said, "I would love to tell you that I was shocked by her level. Mary, her abilities exceed the level of creativity, and arguably a little smarter than Zane, and her diplomatic skills are higher than Lisa either. She is a combination of strength, intelligence, and cunning." Then he asked her, "Are you going to work with us?" Rit replied, "She refuses, especially after we learned that she was an advisor to the governor of Maysan before his death." Rit added, "I have heard dangerous talk about her. In addition to that, she has a younger brother who is the right-hand shield of King Dan's brother, and she is easily able to convey their news." Elsewhere, Mary said, "You are stupid and exactly the same thinking as my brother. Tell me, what are you going to do? Will you work with me, or am I looking for work elsewhere?" Ars thoughtlessly told her, "Congratulations," and then brought her into his team, while the rest of the team was completely opposed to her being with them. Shortly after, Rhett opened the door to Ars and told him, "I have crossed the line," and Zane would enter crying for Mary, who had been sleeping all day, and when she was bored, she would come down to make fun of them in the training ground. Zane was deeply insulted, as Mary took him to a remote location and ran after the dogs without anyone knowing why. Suddenly they heard a terrifying explosion shaking the entire place, so the soldiers prepared for a possible attack on the village. But the situation was that Mary and Jane were standing still. Mary was betting on who would destroy the place first. Everyone noticed that they wanted to kick her out quickly, but Ars announced to them that she would prove her efficiency. Mary said, "I have an idea. Let's make a challenge between us, and if I lose, I promise I'll leave." Took the words seriously and said, "Let's get started." Ars gathered the soldiers and explained that they would be divided into two groups. The first group with Marie as commander, and the second group with Zayn as commander. They will use training swords to fight a mock battle. If the commander is injured, or the enemy group is completely wiped out, they will achieve victory, while preventing Jane from using her magic. Ars also distributed explosive balls to ensure no one was injured. He asked, "Who will join Mary with me?" No one wanted to go with them, and then Mary said the score was tied, so they sent a group of junior soldiers to avoid superiority on either side. The soldiers prepared to move into the forest, and everyone was watching what was going to happen. Ars said said to Mary, "What do we do with Rhett and Jane?" Mary replied that she had a plan and looked at the soldiers and said, "In principle, we will lose, but that is if I am not with you, loved ones." She began to explain her plan, while Rhett explained to the soldiers, "Mary's team is very weak, and they probably set a trap for us, so we will divide into 2 groups. I'm in front, Zane is in the second set, and will be behind us in support. If the enemy attacks them, use blasts immediately, and we'll get back to you with good news." Everyone replied, "Okay." The plan began to be implemented, but suddenly they heard an explosion from the front, so they went there, surprised when a member of Mary's team appeared from among the trees saying, "Please, take me with you on your team, and I promise to tell you their plan." "Okay," Rhett replied, revealing the plan, saying Mary expected them to be divided into 2 groups. Then they heard an explosion from the side of the palace, as if a real attack was going to happen on them, which means that when they return to the palace they will be locked there, and Zane will be in an easy trap. Rhett said, "Ars can't agree to that. You seem to be lying to us." The person replied, "Yes, I'm a liar. Mary asked me to set a trap for you," and then said, "I'll tell you the right plan." He opened a map, referring to the location of the ambush prepared by Mary. He said, "As soon as you reach that point, the soldiers will attack you from both sides, and as soon as you get there, I will use the explosive ball with me, although I will not do that, and they will be surprised by the attack that will eliminate them." Rhett took the explosive ball from him, and made the soldiers search for it, and another explosive ball appeared from them, and the one who was with him was carrying the phantom explosive ball, while he was going to use the real ball to carry out Mary's attack. "We'll turn behind them and surprise them to finish them off," Rhett told the soldiers, revealing Mary's plan. They reached the soldiers' position and gathered from behind to attack them with foolish effort, but it turned out to be an ambush hidden inside Marie's ambush. Mary went out and Ars was with her, looking at one of her soldiers, saying, "Long live on you." Then Rhett told her, "I don't understand anything anymore. Where did your soldiers go? In any case, if we eliminate Ars, I will declare victory." Rhett turned completely, while Mary picked up Ars and dragged him, and Rhett and the soldiers ran after her, and Ars shouted, "Rhett, hold them." Suddenly the trap set for them worked, and the soldiers fell one by one. Rhett too fell into a trap, and then got up and continued running after them, until Rhett saw nothing in front of him. Mary told Ars, "You'll be even more happy when you do what I told you." Ars started throwing balls at them, and in a moment of loud explosion, the area was devastated. "Have you seen anything like that, my friend?" On the other hand, Mary's team discovered Zane's whereabouts and pointed to him, and Zane informed his team that there were few soldiers, and that they would be able to eliminate them easily. But the rest of the soldiers appeared from all directions and surrounded them, which meant that Mary faced Rhett and his team alone. At that moment, Jane took Zen and quickly fled, while the soldiers set off behind them. The situation returned to Mary, who seemed very happy and told Ars, "We won," she continued. "Look, Jane has fallen, and Zane is trying to escape, but the soldiers force him to go in the same direction as Mary, and Zane is only 2 steps away until he meets Mary, as she was already targeting him." Suddenly, Rhett discovered her plan and told her, "It's impossible to get to Zane." Mary replied, "Don't worry, he's going to get to us now." Then Rhett tried with all his might to eliminate Ars, while Zane was on Mary's goal, and suddenly, Rhett hit 2-second explosive balls. Dust filled the place, and everyone gathered waiting for the decisive moment. Indeed, Mary won, and Mary's team came home celebrating their victory, while Rhett's face and disappointment pervaded his team. However, Rhett said, "Despite the weakness of our teams, you won brilliantly." Ars then apologized with Zane to Mary, and they welcomed her into the team. Mary explained that if there had been a real battle, she would not have had a chance to win, because Jane did not use her abilities, and Rhett he fights against Ars, and not on his side. Ars thanked her, saying, "You're lucky to have been able to assemble such a team," and then asked, "What's your next step?" Mary replied, "Very simple. Strive with all your might to become emperor, that is, to rule all the provinces." Suddenly, Ars recalled Raven's words and said to himself, "I'm sure you're going to be a very great figure in the future." Afterwards, they had a big party celebrating Mary officially joining the team, and everyone was happy. Suddenly, Rhett approached Ars and said, "I'm really sorry. I disappointed you and broke my promise with Raven. I feel like I won't be able to protect you as I thought." Ars replied, "You did what you had to do, and it increased, but the road is long and I need you with me." On the other hand, Zane thanked Marie, saying, "I understand why you were beating me while running." And Mary replied, "Being smart doesn't mean you're going to survive on the battlefield. Battle needs competencies other than intelligence, and if someone falls in your position during the fight, a lot of soldiers will perish behind them. So next time, I'll train you and make Jane attack you with her magic." After a little time, Ars found himself alone in the room, until the maid came in informing him of the existence of a letter from King Dan, asking to attend the last meeting before the decisive battle, with the need to bring the whole team and get ready to go. Will Ars be able to fight the war without bloodshed as he wants? And what happens next? Events seem to be coming at the doors. This is the end of the part we're showing now. If you want to know what happens next, write to me in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe.